Unpacking is a game made up of nothing but unpacking boxes. Every time your character moves into a new bedroom, a new dorm room, a new apartment, a new house, you unpack all of their belongings, arrange and organize them throughout each room. It manages to tell a surprisingly rich story solely through your character's possessions. The only thing you know about your character is what they own, what they bring with them to each new living space, but that tells you a lot more than you might think. Our living spaces and how we arrange them absolutely reflect who we are as people, and that's a well-established method of characterization across all fiction, film, and video games. You can learn a ton about someone by snooping through their bedroom, and writers have known this for a long time. When you move into a new apartment or new house, when you're arranging your belongings, you're really arranging your life at the same time, rearranging what your new daily life is going to look like, and that can be exciting. Unpacking tells a growing and developing story over the course of the game. You learn about how this character's life is changing depending on what new objects appear or which old objects disappear. But the thing about Unpacking's story that really impressed me is how it manages to communicate information about relationships through nothing but objects. In Unpacking, you can learn a ton about how characters fit together by seeing how their possessions fit together in a shared space. And that's the focus of this video, examining how Unpacking tells the story of relationships through objects. So the first two levels of Unpacking are solo. Our character is arranging objects in her own individual space. There's no sharing of spaces, so no relationship storytelling is happening yet. But in these first two levels, we do learn a lot about our character and her interests. We learn that she has an interest in the visual arts, in painting and drawing. You can see her art supplies in both her bedroom and her university dorm room, and you can see completed framed drawings and paintings on her walls. She has an interest in video games and music. She has this cute stuffed animal pig, which turns out to be one of the few objects she brings with her to every single new living space in the game, so obviously a lot of sentimental attachment. There's an early interest in sports and soccer that later falls away. She's got a Game Boy and a Tamagotchi, but it's when she moves into her first shared house that things get interesting story-wise. In the first two levels, you fill up an empty space with your own belongings, but in this third level, the house is already totally packed with your roommate's possessions. You have to find places to fit your own stuff in between theirs, and this ultimately tells a story of very good friendships. Your character has two roommates, judging by their possessions, which is of course all we can judge them by, since neither of them ever appears on screen. One roommate is interested in costume or dressmaking, and the other is really interested in bugs. You can find fabrics and sewing machines and such all over the house, and you can find bugs, lots and lots of bugs. These are not interests that our character explicitly shares. You never see any sewing materials or bugs in the previous levels, but our character is an artist, a creative type, a gamer, basically a dork. These are all sorts of dorky and nerdy types of interests. Even though these three roommates don't explicitly share the exact same passions, it's easy to see just through their possessions how their personalities could gel together. They're all of a certain quirky, artsy-fartsy, nerdy type. But what's even more impressive to me from a storytelling perspective is how easy it is to fit your possessions among theirs. The shared spaces are really eclectic and cluttered. You can see all sorts of different things being shoved together in a disorganized, haphazard way, and yet they fit together so easily. For example, your stuffed animals fit together with theirs on the shelf, or your miniature figurines fit very easily with theirs on the same shelf. The types of books and DVDs match. Even your new magnets on the fridge match the ones that are already there. All over the house there are these open spaces waiting for you. It's so easy to fit your objects in among theirs. This is what I mean when I say that Unpacking is able to tell the story of relationships through objects. Just through how easy it is to fit these objects together, you can see how easily these three roommates fit together, how potentially close and positive these friendships are. Characterization through objects in living spaces is basically ubiquitous across all stories, but I don't think I've ever seen a story show how relationships work via the vehicle of different characters' possessions, literally physically fitting together in a shared space in quite this way before. It's really really smart, really creative, and honestly really impressive. Before I move on to the next level to see how this relationship storytelling through shared living spaces develops, let's look briefly at our character's bedroom here, because this is her own personal space where we learn about how her story is developing as an individual. She's got even more professional art supplies, art reference books, a growing collection of sketching journals, and now she has a diploma. She graduated, yippee! Pig is still here, he's still looking cute. She has the uniform from some food service type job, so like most people who are pursuing creative careers, despite having a university degree, straight out of college she's still stuck in some dead-end customer service type job. I am very familiar with that life. That is the experience of a lot of people in creative pursuits. The soccer ball has disappeared, and some medications have appeared in the bathroom. This is a story that will keep developing as the game progresses. Our character has some unstated debilitating physical ailment, which requires medication and seems to keep getting worse, but we never learn actual specifics. Okay, let's move on to the next level. In that third level, we saw an example of what it looks like when 3 lives very easily fit together. In this fourth level, we will see an example of what it looks like when 2 lives don't fit together at all. In the fourth level, our character has moved into her boyfriend's cramped city apartment, and it's actually kind of the hardest level in the game. It's really hard to find space for your possessions here, where in that previous level, there were all these empty spaces waiting for you, and it was so easy to fit your objects alongside the objects of your roommates, because your lives fit easily together. In this apartment, there is no empty space waiting for you. You have to constantly rearrange the boyfriend's things, and make space for yourself, and stuff things under the bed, anywhere you can find a little bit of room, because these are 2 lives that aren't fitting easily together. The game accomplishes demonstrating that this relationship is going to have problems without us ever actually seeing either of the characters or any of their interactions. Again, it's very impressive work. I think there is also a very noticeable clashing of styles in this level. The boyfriend has this sleek modern apartment where everything is dark, gray or black. Compare the grayscale colors here to how vibrant and visually chaotic the last level was. In this apartment, everything is neat and organized. It almost has a sort of clinical feel to it, even when you can find space. Visually, your belongings don't look like they belong in here. Look at Pig. Look at cute little pink Pig. He is so out of place on this dark bed. He doesn't belong here in this hipster tool apartment. Your character's objects are colorful and cutesy, and they don't match the dark modern style in here at all. Another very telling detail is that your diploma does not fit anywhere on any of the walls, except above the toilet. The bathroom is the only place in this apartment with room for your diploma. Now, to be fair, this is where both of my own college degrees probably belong, right in the freaking toilet, along with the human feces and used dental floss. But in the context of Unpacking, what I think is happening here is that in this relationship, our character has no room for her creative ambitions, and perhaps her partner has no respect for her creative ambitions. There's also nowhere convenient to put down your art supplies. There's no working space here for our character to practice her visual art. The game shows us through objects, through available space, that in this relationship our character will not be able to pursue her creative ambitions. There is no room for them here. The only shared interest we can see between these 2 clashing personalities is music. The boyfriend has a guitar, and our character has acquired a ukulele. I think. Maybe it's just a little guitar, I don't know instruments. Anyway, unsurprisingly, this relationship doesn't work out. In the next level, she has moved out of the boyfriend's apartment and back into her old family home, back into that little bedroom from the first level. Again, without any words, without any cutscenes, without ever seeing the character on screen. The game is still successfully communicating the story of her life to us. She has fallen on hard times. She has nowhere to go but back home, which is something else I'm quite familiar with. The embarrassing retreat back into your old childhood home after a failed attempt at living out in the real world. Through its music and tone, the game manages to convey those feelings of defeat and exasperation and failure, the feelings of going backwards that can accompany moving back into your parents' house. Our character's life was steadily progressing forward, and now it takes a sudden U-turn. It can be hard not to feel like a child when you're sleeping in your childhood bed. The game also does a good job of showing how our character's life has grown beyond this bedroom. The game started in this bedroom, but with all of the possessions she's accumulated since moving out, all of the experiences, it really is too small for her now. There's not enough room in here for her anymore. Her adult life and her creative ambitions are too large for this space, and the game is able to show that through this room not having quite enough space for your belongings. You have to clutter up this desk and shelf. You have to shove a bunch of things under the bed. Moving on, in the next level your character has moved again, by herself into a small home. Clearly things are looking up. Compared to the previous two levels, this one felt so freeing. At the boyfriend's apartment and in your old bedroom there was not nearly enough space. Even back with the roommates, you were having to fit your stuff in and around the roommates' possessions. But in this house there's so much room. You can arrange everything however you like. You don't have to maneuver around anyone else's stuff or within any limitations. I think the game does a really good job here of letting you experience the absolute freedom that can come from living on your own. Being able to totally craft your own space without having to worry about stepping on anyone else's toes. I found this level to be really fun. I really enjoyed organizing and arranging things without any limitations. It's the first time our character has been able to dedicate an entire room to her artistic ambitions, an entire creative workroom. However, there's kind of too much space. You don't have enough objects to fill this place up. There is empty space everywhere, but that empty space speaks to future promise. Eventually those spaces will be filled, as our character's life is filled with new experiences. In the next level, we get to see more of how Unpacking communicates information about relationships through objects and shared living spaces, because our character has a new romantic partner, and that new romantic partner is moving in. For the first time in the game, instead of fitting your own objects around someone else's, trying to rearrange things and make space so you can fit into someone else's already established life, this time you are fitting someone else's objects around yours. You are rearranging and making space so someone else can fit into your life. It's a really interesting way to give the player the experience of inviting someone else to share your living space, of inviting someone else's life into your own. The mixing of possessions genuinely feels really intimate here. The partner's objects fill in all those empty spaces I mentioned before. As you bring in all these new objects, you're also bringing in all this color, all this vibrancy, all this life into the newly shared living space. The partner literally brings life into this home because she's brought all of these plants with her. Every single room becomes filled with these decorative plants, and they add so much color and life to the environment. This is a really good way of showing through objects, through how the new objects fit with and build upon the old ones, of showing how a good relationship can build you up. You can physically see here how our character's life is being enhanced and enlivened by her significant other. It's a really stark contrast to how visually cramped and clashing the boyfriend's apartment was in that earlier level. What really sealed the deal for me was that this new partner brought a partner for Pig 2. I can't say enough about how impressive I think this is. I don't know anything about any of these characters except their possessions, and yet I feel like I have such a deep understanding of their relationships, and that's through seeing how their objects fit together, when there is or isn't enough space, how objects visually match each other, or how they visually clash. It's some of the best environmental storytelling I've ever seen. Anyway, so what do we know about this new partner? She appears to work in the television industry. There's this signed poster for the second season of Anti-Hero on the wall here, as well as an Anti-Hero brand hat. There are some awards I put on this shelf, so she's apparently quite accomplished. There are also some film reference books that I put on this other shelf, so her interest in film is definitely more than just a hobby. It's hard to say exactly what her role in the production of the TV show is, but this is definitely another creative type. someone who's gonna fit in with our artist character. The partner seems to have a lot more in the way of makeup supplies, and her clothing seemed much flashier than our characters, so I thought she might be an actress. Perhaps our character does some kind of artwork for the TV show, and her partner plays a character on the show? It's hard to say for sure. That's the interesting thing about this game's story. On the one hand, I feel like I have an intimate understanding of their relationship. But on the other, I don't actually know very many specific details about either of their lives. Now, let's move on to the last level of the game. Our two characters are still together, and they're moving into their first full-sized house. I've long accepted that I will never ever own a home of my own, so I really appreciate Unpacking allowing me to vicariously experience new home ownership through this game. It was a pleasant experience. Something I found interesting about this level is that the possessions of our two characters, all of their objects, are completely mixed together now. Before, there was a clear separation between what belonged to who. Different objects came out of different looking boxes, but now there is no separation. The objects are literally jumbled together without any distinction of what belongs to who. Everything simply belongs to the family now. It's a really subtle but effective way of showing how these two characters have gone from being partners with separate lives to a family with a shared life. In our character's story, there have been some exciting developments. She apparently wrote and illustrated a successful children's book, and the main character is Pig, because Pig was the true star of this story all along. Pig is a freaking baller. There's also a nursery, so there's a baby on its way. And so the whole story is about to start over again. Soon there will be a new little human being running around and flapping its stupid mouth, who will get their own first room, and then go off to start their own life. And as they accumulate life experiences, they'll also accumulate a bunch of junk, and the cycle goes on, yada yada. I'll admit I teared up a little bit when I put Pig in the crib. He's sitting there sporting a classy new yellow bow tie, and I was like, aw, Pig is waiting for his new friend. You're gonna be somebody else's pig now, my old friend, but I promise they're gonna love you just as much as I did. Farewell, Pig. Anyway, as I've said a dozen times already, Unpacking really is some impressive environmental storytelling work. It's not just that it manages to tell a story through objects. Tons of stories have done that. But the way it tells relationships through objects, through how objects mix together in shared living spaces, how it uses color and visuals and empty spaces to show how some characters get along and others don't, that felt genuinely unique and original to me. I know I'm late to the party here, but I really liked this game.